Hello, everybody. Thanks for stopping by and listening to me talking about network design. My name is Mark Holm. I am the exam program manager for the CCD certification here at Learning and Certifications. So I talk network design all the time. That's what I do, and that's how I make a living in my professional career at the moment. I make sure that if you go take the CCD exam, it's my job to make sure we test you the right way. But I'm not going to talk so much about the DE today. I'm going to talk much more about some of the stuff you need to know to be able to be a network designer. Because at the end of the day, network design is not just making some drawings in Visio or other drawing programs. This is about knowing the requirements, knowing your customer, knowing your organization to make sure they get what they need, right? So it's not just about technical knowledge, you need other things as well. So that's what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to give you an example that's going to look very simple, but it's going to have two very different outcomes depending on the requirements. So quickly, there is a WebEx space for this, so after the session, if you registered, you should have been added to a room. If not, let us know. Otherwise, feel free to ask me questions afterwards if you have any follow-up questions or anything I've been saying today. So let's have a look at some of the required skills that you need. Because network design is not an exact science. You need to have technical knowledge, and you need to have experience, all right? Because without the experience, it will be harder for you to design well-functioning networks that are built to the purpose they are supposed to do. And then you need to understand the goals of what you are trying to do. So if you're working on a project, you need to understand why this project, what are the goals? What do you want to achieve, your customer or your organization, what are you trying to get to? Don't just blindly assume, oh, this is just a network. It won't be. There's going to be some requirements, there's going to be some business behind it that needs this to make sure they are fully able to utilize this network afterwards. And we see this every day. Network designs that are bad, they cause problems every day. So essentially you spend up a lot of time and money fixing those problems. Those money would have been much better spent making a proper design at the beginning of the project. But the thing here, and this is bullet number 4 here, is very important. There is no one size fits all. That doesn't exist. So when we talk about Cisco validated designs, they are very good. They are validated, of course, hence their name. But at the end of the day, they should be seen as a starting point. You need to trust and verify. Make sure it actually fits, because there might be, or likely will be, a requirement somewhere in this information you get from your customer that says, we can't use the solution as it is. We need to make some adjustments. And there's always going to be some trade-off somewhere. You can't build the coolest network ever built because the customer probably can't afford it, right? You need to make sure that you find a balance between features and what's actually needed. Don't just throw in a lot of features because somebody has to pay for it at the end of the day. And money, it always wins, every time. No matter what you do, if there's no money to buy what you're suggesting, you won't win. It's going to be shut down. It's not going to be valid design for this game. So this is why you need not a master's degree, but you need a business understanding to be able to do proper network design and be a true expert in that field. So you need to be able to analyze and understand what you're working with, what you're working in, and who you're working for. If you don't have that understanding, chances are you will be making wrong decisions somewhere along the path and will fail to meet the requirements that you've been asked or tasked to do. So you need to make sure that whatever you do, it supports whatever goals and strategy are set for that business. Again, if you fail, they won't call you next time they need a design project. You need to make sure that whatever you do is aligned with the strategy. So you need to ask questions. You need to make sure you understand this. Don't assume it. verify by asking. And then you need to, of course, meet all the requirements, but there's also going to be some constraints. It might be, oh, we can't use new technologies. Or this, we can't use, nobody says that today, but we can't use VXLAN. We will only use traditional VLANs. Okay, might happen. But there might be constraints that you need to add to that will completely take away everything that you have learned recently here at Cisco Live. Say this is a new cool technology, this is what you should all be doing. But if the customer says, we don't want that, then you have to meet that requirement by not doing it. So again, it ties into that you know who you're working for. So if you're working on a new project, spend a little time researching the company name, researching what they do, what kind of a company are you working with. Because if you do that, you might have a better understanding and a good starting point in succeeding and understanding what they're doing. You need, and we talk about this, I say business requirements, you also need to have deep, solid technical understanding of the features, the protocols, all the technologies. You need to have good knowledge of them because you need to know what kind of problems they can solve and how they can solve them. And you only have that by having a deep technical knowledge. You can't just, oh, I think VLAN will be good here. You need to know why VLAN will be good because you need to ask the why questions. So if you talk about the CCIE, which is much more about implementation, so this is more how you do it. When you do a design, you have to ask why. Because you don't implement, you typically anyway, you don't implement as a network designer. You design the network and you hand it off to somebody else to actually do the implementation. You don't do everything yourself unless you're a very small organization where you might have both caps on. But most importantly, you have to size it right. Don't gold plate it. Again, it ties back to the requirements. If they don't have a requirement to do feature set, then don't put it there because it will be overplating and will be a waste of time and resources to build in the feature they will never use or don't even want. And then lastly, this is where the business stuff comes in. You need to be comfortable working with topics like CapEx, OpEx, TCO, total cost of ownership, return on investment, because you need to understand, again, the money is king, not technology. So you need to be able to work with these numbers and figure out what's going to cost the long run, what's going to be OpEx, what's going to be a CapEx. And you need to understand there's going to be a cost of operating and owning this network. So not only the acquiring the hardware, acquiring the hours to implement it, you also need to operate it until the day you have to refresh everything. So remember, everything is cyclical. It all goes back. You design, then you run it, and at some point you're going to go back and make a new design because things change. And this is also what a designer does. Understands that there is always going to be changes. One of the most important things you need to do is listen. When you sit in meetings with your customer, you have to listen to what they are saying and also what they're not saying. Because it's hardly ever going to happen to you that a customer is going to say exactly, we want this and we want it like that. They don't know. It's your job. So what they're saying and then what they're not saying, listen to what's between the lines. Because they might not say it directly, so you need to be able to catch, oh, this is what you really want. You're saying you're wanting this, but in reality you want something over here. But often these people that you're talking to, as the network designer, might be CTOs or CFOs. They might not know all the technical side. So you need to be able to speak business language and understand that they are going to express something in what we need for our business, and then you have to listen to them and figure out and translate that into the design at the end of the day. So you're going to talk to a bunch of relevant people, not only CTOs and things like that, but you're also going to talk to network engineers. You're going to talk to them, okay, so what do you need? What are your pain problems today? What do you struggle with today? And how can you, what are your skill sets? Because another thing you have to consider, if you bring in brand new technology, there's also going to be training. If you don't have the necessary skills in the organization to run the network, again, it's not relevant, it's going to be useless at the end of the day. So if you get to a customer that doesn't have budget for training or time for training, you'll lose. Because if you put in new technology that requires training, the staff is not skilled for it, you lost. You didn't do your job as a network designer. Keep everything you've gathered information, keep it there, because it might be something that's not relevant now, it might become relevant down the road. Or again, make sure you have it available, don't throw it away and assume, oh, this is never going to use this piece of information. Make good notes, you need to have good notes. Taking skills probably will be a good thing to do. And first of all, no preconceived notions and ideas. Because if you do, you're going to have a bias towards a certain solution even before you know what the requirements are. You need to make sure that you leave your head open, a mind open to everything can happen. So if you avoid those preconceived notions, that means you're open to adjust. So you might have an idea of what you want to do, but then you're much more willing and able to adjust and change course based on what you hear. If you're going to say it's going to be VXLAN no matter what, and you end up saying VXLAN is not the right fit, then again, you lost. You didn't do your job. And you don't want to make assumptions, so you want to talk to the people, ask them questions. Never assume anything unless you've been told you can assume this. So never automatically assume anything. And finally, the 2 a.m. in the morning test. If somebody calls you, can you justify the decisions you have made? All right? Can you at any point say, why did you choose VXLAN? Oh, it was because you just told me this, and you have this requirement, and you have the skills to support it. Okay, then it's the right decision. But if you can't, you're probably wrong. Then if you can't justify decisions, again, you haven't done your job right. So network designer, you will work with high-level designs. So these are not going to be anything about protocol timers or how you implement OSPF in the areas, or if it's going to be ISIs, what kind of routing protocols you use. You're going to define it's going to be ISIs because of the skill set you have, or you're already using it in the network. But you don't get to, typically don't deal with all the details of how you implement. That will be part of the low-level design, which an implementation engineer, such as a CCIE or CCNP, would actually do the actual implementation. And this high-level design, it's just a few of the common things you've put in there. So you will describe all the design that you're proposing. You will gather, all the gathered information, say this is what I've been told. So based on this I've been told, I can meet these requirements by doing like this and this and this, and then describe this entire solution from point A to point B. And again, explain why the decisions were made. Because it makes it easy for the customer to understand why you're doing the way you're doing. Because they told you this, you told me this, so I'm going to do this. Okay, so they can say, okay, we told you to do so, but actually we were in mistake. We should not have told you that, because we're going to do this instead. Then it doesn't fall back on you. You can actually say, I made a decision based on what you told me, so let's rework the case and make sure it actually goes well, and we fix the problem. You might also have to do a little bit of migration planning. Figure out who's going to be involved and things like that. So it might be a high-level planning you need to do as well. But typically, again, this is more for the implementation side. But it's going to be, depending on the organization, it might be a little trade-off, or it might a little bit more differently cut between implementation and design. You want to be listing like bill of materials, statement of works, and other documents that you do. This is, of course, important to know. Like, so, okay, this is going to be what you have to order. This is what you, the amount of hours you need to invest to actually get this done. But that's going to be part of the high-level design as well. And at the end of the day, this is going to be the document you present to your customer, and they sign off on that and tell, yes, now you've done your job, and now we can proceed with the actual implementation. So typically from high-level design to implementation is done. It can be several months, maybe even years, depending on the size of the project. But the high-level design is going to be the basis of everything that's going to happen all the way down along that line to make sure that at the end of the day you have this implemented in a way that is meaningful to the business that you're working with. So I have a little example here. It's going to be very, very simple. We have a very small data center here, collapsed core distribution, very small customer. So this is what they have today. You get a call from the customer, and they're going to talk a little about we need additional capacity and we want a second DC side. Okay, who doesn't want a second DC side? There's 15 kilometers, sorry, I'm European, so I'm use kilometers. 15 kilometers between sites. They will need full layer 2 mobility. Okay, they need VM or containers that can move across both data centers. And they have plenty of fiber options. Okay, cool. But it doesn't help you much. You know, there's a few very basic requirements. You need a second DC side, but at the end of the day, you can't really work with this. You need more information. But the only thing we can use is that we want a second DC side. All right. Okay, we're going to replicate build a new site that's completely identical. Okay. Next step, we have to figure out how to connect these together. And again, with the information we have, it's not going to be a lot. So this is where technical knowledge comes in. So you might start looking a little bit about all the options that are available that can solve the problem you're trying to do, right? What are you going to do? You're going to use SDN or traditional network, you're going to use BGP, EVPN, VXLAN, you're going to use some kind of WDM system to connect the sites. And these are just some of the examples, but this is where your technical knowledge comes in and you figure out, you make a short list of things that might solve the problem you're tasked to solve. At the end of the day, what is the answer? Right? All the information, it depends. Because the context you're putting it in is what really matters. So at this point, you would have to go to the customer and say, thank you for the assignment, but let's sit down and have a cup of coffee, and let's talk a little bit what you actually need. So we're going to take the first version here, is that you sit down, have a talk, and say, okay, we don't have a big team, it's a small company, and they're always busy, and they don't have time for training, and they want to do things simple. They don't have, because of the skills, they don't have everything ready, so they don't have any automation plans, and something that's standard. Right? They don't have any more, so again, CapEx, capital expenditure, so that means if you buy a piece of equipment, that means it's a CapEx, and OpEx is operational cost, right? So they don't have any CapEx, so you can't buy additional hardware, except for the new site. But you can't buy anything for the existing site, you can only buy for the new site. Okay, so you chew a little bit on that, you come back, and then you're going to look and say, hey, simple, they want something simple. Do a simple layer 2 extension between the sites, make a port channel to avoid any spanning tree issues. Is it ideal by today's standards? No, probably not. But this is what the customer wants. They want something that's simple, they want standard-based. Okay, you're going to throw in a port channel with LACP to keep track of all the links, and you have the full layer 2 mobility. You're checking off all the boxes with a very simple solution, and they have the fibers available, so you can connect them as you want. This meets the requirements of the customer, but it's not modern, it's not fancy, it's not cool by today's standards, but it works, gets the job done, right? So let's imagine another situation. You reset here, we go back and you go talk to the customer and they say, okay, we can add some complexity because we've got skills, we've got good people working for us. We want as much control of the end-to-end path as possible. We got some cabbage, we can buy some new gear if we need to. We need automation. And we want centralized policy management if we can. So again, preferred versus need. Make sure you know those things. It's a strict requirement or a nice to have requirement, right? There are differences. So if it's a preferred, if you can add it, perfect. If you can't, just say it's not possible. But if it's we must have this, then you can't really get away from not doing it. And they need like a 3-fold increase in their needed number of links because they know they have done their forecast, so they think in the next 12 months we need even more capacity. Okay, cool. Then, let's build a spine leaf architecture. Connect the leaf to each other. You have some WDM system in the middle to do all the links so you can add multiple channels as the capacity needs change. And you can add SDN controllers if you need to have, if you want that automation capability or you want centralized policy management, you can add SDN controllers, you can add Ansible, you can add all those things along the way, again, based on the requirements of the skill set of the customer, you can add this. And this is really 2 very different ways of solving the same problem here, because this can offer layer 2 mobility as well. It offers the additional capacity, just in a more modern way. because these are the requirements that you can meet now, and build something that's much more up to today's standards. There's always one more. You can always find one or more than one way to do it. The thing is, you have to figure out which one is the best one. And what would you recommend? Because of course, if there are two solutions that would do the exact same thing in the exact same way, make the same requirements, and meet all the same things, then you essentially have to choose and say, okay, I would recommend this, because then it's your personal, might be a personal experience, say this works better in this environment than this. But then again, you would have to document it and say, because of personal experience, we recommend this way, because it works better traditionally in these kinds of environments. I mentioned before, must, prefer, require, expect, nice to have, need to have. Make sure you do it, because this is a change in the requirements that you have. And do you need to meet them, or should you need them, or can you meet them? It all, make sure you do it. And then again, go back, ask. One single person probably won't have all your answers, so you have to talk to a bunch of people. Again, network engineers, CFO, CTOs, maybe even users, because if they're complaining about issues when they connect to the application, there might be you need to implement some kind of quality of service you need to add on top of it. So talk to all the stakeholders that's there, make sure you get all the input, because otherwise you're only going to get one side of the affair. If you only talk to the CFO, you're tasked to build something that's cheap. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it doesn't meet what the technical requirements are. And if you only talk to the network engineers, they're going to say, we want the latest and greatest and coolest features, but the CFO is going to say, no, we're not going to pay for that. So as the network designer, you are the bridge between the business and the technology side. You can speak both languages, or you should be able to speak both languages. That's what the true network design does if you work with this in a professional way. You can speak to both sides. Make sure that you spend the time you need. Don't say, oh, I'm going to go, I don't have more time today, so I'm not going to ask more questions. I think the rest here, information I didn't get my answers to, I'm just going to assume things. No. Spend the time. Spend all the time you need to make sure you get all the information you need to build the design in the way you're expected to do. And again, I've said this many times, but don't forget, there's going to be expectations from the business side, and there's going to be requirements from the business side, not only the technical side. So again, money wins at the end of the day. It is king, right? So when you talk about in context with CCD, because I would be a fool not to talk about the CCD when I'm here, this is exactly what we do with the CCD. We test you on these skills. We test you on the ability to speak to both the technical side and the business side, gathering all information, analyzing what you're working with. That's what we test you on. That's going to be something that you have to do business drivers is, why are you doing this? Is because you want to be more agile in your in future changes in your strategic direction in your company, whatever it might be. But this is what we test you on. This is all, we will test you and give you anything that you need, and ultimately you will build a solution that matches this at the end of the day. And we do this in an 8-hour marathon if you take the exam. I hope to see you to take the exam one day, of course, so feel free to ask Anne, reach out if you do that. But it's going to be 4 of these scenarios. And every scenario is going to be like I just talked about. It's going to be, you have a bunch of requirements, you have an existing topology. What can we do to make X, Y, Z happen? This is what we do. And you do that for 4 different scenarios. And these are not connected in any way. So when you finish with the 2-hour, you have to clear your mind, reset your mind, and go back and start the next scenario. It's going to be completely different. It's going to be different requirements. It's going to be a different company. It might even be a completely different vertical you're working with. But for the DE, this is going to be across more verticals. It can be enterprise, of course. This is what we focus on. But it can be wireless. It can be even collaboration. It can be routing switching. It can be WAN. It can be anything that you would find within an enterprise. And then we have this little thing here at the end called the area of expertise, which is a more specialized scenario. Again, same concepts apply, but just focusing on something a little more could be service provider oriented. So if you work as a service provider, it might be more relevant for you to take this scenario. We have something that deals with data centers and cloud, and we have one that works heavily on wireless. So radio planning, all that stuff that goes with site surveys, all that stuff that goes with a proper wireless design. But at the end of the day, it's an 8-hour scenario-based exam, and it is a marathon. But I tell you, I can guarantee you this is worth it, because I know from talking to those who pass the exam, whenever they take the CCD and they get the CCD badge, the doors open to talk to CXO level people. You can now get talking time in front of CTOs, CFOs, because the industry knows the CCD is able to speak business and technology. It's not focused on technology alone. We can speak both. We are the gap between business and technology. Whenever you do one of these exams, it's going to have a lot of introduction, so it's going to tell you what the company are, what they do, what are their strategies, all that stuff that you would need to be able to get a glimpse and get an idea of what you're working with. Get a company background, topology joins, and then you will get some ongoing correspondence. You will get like emails. So again, imagine you're sitting in a meeting with your customer and they tell you, this is what we want. Oh, by the way, and then you get another email saying, oh, we also want this. This is no longer relevant. This is what you get. So this is presented to you along the full 2-hour scenario. And you have to figure out, it is your job to figure out what the relevant information is and make the decisions with the questions you get in your exam. And first of all, do not fight the test. Because if you think, oh, I know better than this is much better, I know exactly how this should work, you're not listening to what we're saying in all the documentation. Because, again, leave your outside knowledge and preconceived notions at the door. You're in a bubble for 2 hours or 8 hours. You live in that. So don't fight the test by saying, I know better. This is a sure way to fail the exam. I can guarantee you that. And when you do this, you become a different network engineer than you are today. If you add this business skill set on top of your technical skill set, it's going to be a completely different game, because you can get different kind of roles. You can get talk time in front of CFOs, CTOs. It's going to change your career. Of course, if you're genuinely interested in working with network design, if you're 100% network implementation, then this probably is not for you. But if you need that design and you love network design and you want to do more network design, have a look at the DE. Because you'll learn that there's more to it than just the business side, or the technology side. There's a ton of business side you need to meet too. So it's pretty much what I wanted to say here. I'll be around if you want to ask questions. Feel free to stop by. I'm typically around the certification lounge here. And we have tons of different training that you can do. So feel free to come by, ask us questions, ask some of my colleagues in the certification lounge about learning paths and CISCOU, how they can help you on your journey. So feel free to come by and say that. And with that said, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate your time.